Recording. All right, the audio is on too, so I assume this is fine. I think it's recording, hopefully. Okay, and get started. Yeah.
Okay, so welcome to the fifth and final session of Stackschool. Jenna and I are gonna be your presenters today, and we're gonna work on SwiftUI navigation and styling. And here are the QR codes to the slides and the Discord. So if you wanna scan those. No? And here are some links. As said, we're gonna be working on navigation and the UI UX today. So this is the agenda. We're gonna start by going over custom views. Then we're gonna go through navigation, gestures and haptic feedback, animations and transitions, accessibility, performance optimizations, and finally, publishing your app to the App Store. So first up, custom views. So as you hopefully know by now, SwiftUI provides some basic views like text, button, images, etc. But you're actually able to create your own custom views as well, similar to how components work in React. And you might ask why we want to use custom views. First of all, they're highly reusable. So when you've coded your custom view, you can basically use it as many times as you want. And also, if you need to make any changes, they're very easy to change. You just change them in one place instead of going through every individual item. And also, it makes your code much more readable. And on the picture here, you can like imagine like each of these like tweets and this thread of tweets being one custom view. And you might remember that we went through the restaurant row view last time. This is a type of custom view. So to make your own custom view, you should declare it in a separate file just to keep everything organized. So for this specific custom view, this will just print out hello Max. And for the code itself, on the like top line of code here, we're just declaring a structure that conforms to the view protocol with the name greeting view. On the next line here, we're declaring the body as a variable of type view. While here we just have a normal standard text view with the text hello Max, as well as some view modifiers down here. So to use this custom view, we can just use it as any other view, and there's no need to import it either. So as you can see here, we have used the greeting view 3 times, which will then show hello Max 3 times on the app. And a question to the audience. If we declare this custom view in one file and then use it in the main content view, what would this print out? Yes?
A vertical stack of I must not tell lies.
How many times?
3 times.
Correct. Well done. We also have something called props, short for properties in SwiftUI, which is basically what you use to customize views. And yeah, it's just information that you give to the view. So if we go back to our example with the greeting view, hello Max, if you want to make this more versatile, maybe make it possible to use with different names, you would do that like this. You would declare a variable of type string here. In this case, it's just called name. And you can then use this variable in your code by using this syntax down here. So similar to the other example, you can call this as many times as you want. But here you would then give the prop a value each time. So for this example, we're giving it 3 different names. So this would show hello Max, hello Jenna, and hello Sam on the phone screen. You can see here. Next up, navigation.
Okay, I'll be talking about navigation now. So how does navigation work within apps, you might ask? Does anyone want to tell me about anything they notice? These are just screens I take from apps that I use pretty regularly, aside from YouTube. Like any common features you might notice about navigation. Yes.
They all have like a bottom bar.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else?
There's a bar at the top as well for navigation.
Yeah, that's right. So on the top we have like a bar. Usually this pretty much differs a lot between different apps. Like for YouTube, you can search. For Instagram, you can like look at your DMs and also your activity. And then for TikTok, you can kind of like switch through the pages. And then we also have the bottom bar. This one's usually like more common between different apps. Like we'll have the home button on the left side, the profile button on the right side, and usually like some sort of like creation feature in the very middle. And then aside from the top and the bottom, we also have like individual navigation that's going on throughout each of the apps. Like for YouTube, you can click a YouTube video and it'll take you to a YouTube video. For Reels or like Instagram, if you click on a reel, it'll take you to that reel. And then for Webtoon, if you click on a title, it'll take you to the title page. And then for TikTok, if you click like a profile picture, it'll take you to that person's profile. So does anybody want to tell me what they notice about our app, which is our final goal for the app that we're creating? All right, anyways, all right. So you can see that we have like some very similar stuff going on in our own app. We have like on the authentication pages, like a register and a login button. So if you can go from the login page to the registration page, and vice versa. You can also log in or like register. And then aside from that, you also have navigation that's going on the top of the screen. So you can sign out and add a restaurant on the homepage. And then when you navigate to the Bruin Cafe page, there's like a back button to take you back to the homepage. And there's also like a button on the top right for you to add a review. And then aside from that, we also have like an individual navigation too. So like I mentioned earlier, if you click on any of the stuff within the list on the homepage, it'll take you to like a more detailed version of that page to show you more details. So I'm going to talk about a lot about like different navigation functions used within Swift. The first one I'll mention is navigation view. And this is only to say that it's deprecated in iOS 16 and later. So you shouldn't be using this. And instead, what you want to use is navigation stack or navigation split view. So the very first one that I'll talk about is navigation stack. So what this is a view that displays a root view and enables you to present additional views over the root view. So you'll add views to the top of the stack by clicking or tapping a navigation link, and you'll remove views using controls like a back button or a swipe gesture. So if you're familiar with what stacks are, you'll think that it's very like aptly named. And in case you aren't familiar with the stack is, you can kind of think of it like a stack of pancakes. Like you'll have like a pancake on the very bottom, and then when you put another pancake, it'll only go on top. And each time you'll just be adding to the top of the stack. And whenever you want to remove something, it's like really difficult for you to take it from the middle or from the bottom. So you'll just remove it from the top every time. So that's how it kind of works. And like it goes the same for the screens as well. So when you have like a screen, you'll just be adding another screen to the top. And when you navigate back, you'll only be going to the one that you just put on top. So I have some example code on the right, and it might look pretty complicated since there's like a lot of navigation stuff I haven't talked about before. But the main thing that you'll want to pay attention to is the navigation stack we have on there. And within it, we have a navigation link. And then when you click on it, it takes you to the detailed view. And then once you go to detail view, you can press the back button and it'll take you back to the home page. So you can see that in the GIF on the right as well. And then here's another screenshot that I took off from the internet, and hopefully it'll kind of provide a better example of like how the stack is working. So you can see in the root view on the very left image, the person is clicking go to detail A, and then they go to the page show AAAA. And then you can see on the bottom, it says that the number of detail views on the stack is 1 since we're adding that page onto the root view. And then they have another link that says link to 3. And then when they click that, they'll go to the next page, which just says detail with 3. And then by then, the number of detail views on the stack is 2, since we have the AAAA page and also the detail with 3 page. And then on the detail with 3 page, you're just going back to the AAA page, which goes back to the root view. So that's kind of how it works, and I hope you kind of understand this concept a little bit more. The next one that I'll talk about is navigation split view. So this is used for multi-column navigation layouts, typically for iPad and macOS apps, and on iPhones, it behaves like a normal navigation stack. So I suppose this is something you would want to consider using if you're thinking about creating or like publishing your app for iPads and macOS. And this consists of up to 3 columns. The first column is a sidebar, and this is usually a list of navigation links that you'll click. The second one is a content panel, which is like a detail view that updates based on the selection. And then the third one is an optional additional detail, which is a third column for further drill down views. I haven't really seen the third column get used a lot in like any of the apps I can think about. So I'm not going to really talk about it, but like just know that it exists and that it's there. And here's some example code with more GIFs. You can see on the iPhone GIF, like it just looks like a typical navigation stack. However, on the iPad, you can see that there's actually like the sidebar and stuff. And I'll talk a little bit more about the syntax that's here as well. So we have like the navigation split view, and then this first section over here is the sidebar. So we have home, profile, and settings, and this is like the links that you want your users to be able to navigate to. And then we have a detail here, so you can notice this syntax with the detail colon and the curly braces. And basically it's saying if there's a selected item, we want to see the detail view of that selected item. Otherwise, this is the placeholder text, which is just select an item. And you can really only see this placeholder text on like the iPad version. You can't really see it on the iPhone. But yeah, that's how the syntax is for this. So we have this section and then the other detail section. And then here's some more images I took from the internet. And it's basically just showing the layout of how it'll look on a phone versus an iPad. So on the phone, like I mentioned, there's like a sidebar. And then I guess if you're on horizontal section, you have the detail taking up the main screen, but you can also pop out the sidebar here. And then on an iPad, it'll just be the detail. You can pop out the sidebar, and then same goes for the landscape version. So the third thing I'm going to talk about is navigation destination. So this defines the destination view for a specific data type in a navigation stack, and it allows type-based navigation, meaning when a value of a specified type is pushed onto navigation stack, SwiftUI automatically loads the corresponding view. And then here are some rules about navigation destination. The first one is that it should be inside a navigation stack, and that the second one is that you shouldn't place it on the child of a lazy container like list, scroll view, lazy vstack, etc. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is much later in this presentation. And then third one is that the top level navigation destination view modifier will always override the lowest one for the same type. So you can see in this example code, which is actually taken from the app that we're building, we have this navigation stack. And then here it's just saying some logic that if there's no authentication token, we'll be showing the registration and login screen. Otherwise, we'll be showing the restaurant. But here we have like the navigation destination, and then we're taking in a route. And depending on what the route is, will determine which screen to show. So if we have like .register, we'll show the registration screen. If it's .login, we'll show the login screen. And if it's .restaurant list view, it'll be restaurant list view, and etc. Basically, you can add more routes and change the screen depending on what you want. And here's, I think, a simpler example that doesn't relate to our app. So we have a navigation destination here, and we have like a list of colors within the navigation stack. And basically, we're kind of seeing which color we get. And based on the color, we'll go to the detail view for that color. And the detail view is just, this is a detail view with that color. So you can see in the GIF, when you click on colors, you'll just be taken to the appropriate detail view for each specific color. So I think it's like a way of really simplifying your code and making consistent logic with it. And then next I will be talking about navigation link, and you might have already heard me mention this or seen this in some of the other examples in the demos. And this is what you use to navigate between views, and it just wraps the UI element that users interact with to initiate navigation. And this also always needs to be inside a navigation stack. If you're familiar with like web dev, it'll be similar to a nav link, or otherwise, also the A tag is pretty similar as well. So I have the syntax down here, and we have something within the navigation link. This is the object to be clicked. So we want to click the restaurant row view and be taken to our destination. And our destination is here, which we specified destination, and that's the restaurant detail view. So this basically just means every time that you click on like a row for a restaurant, it'll take you to the corresponding detail view for that restaurant as well. And there's a lot of different ways the syntax for navigation links is written. This is just one of the ways, and you'll see like another way later down in the presentation. And each way is like equally valid. It just depends on how you want to write it and what you prefer. But yeah. So this is from our app example. So, and also the previous code was also from our example as well. And so basically this code is just what this is. So this is the row view. Each specific row is here. And then so once you click on it, you'll be taken to the corresponding detail view. And the next one I'll talk about is navigation bar items. And this is also just to mention that it's deprecated and you should use toolbar instead, which is what I'll be talking about next. So toolbar adds more complex and customizable items to the navigation bar. And this is used to add like multiple buttons or actions. And within each toolbar, we have something called a toolbar item. And this just defines a single item within a toolbar. So you can see here we have the main toolbar, and then within each one, we have a toolbar item. And then we also have a placement here, which is another thing that toolbars have. So with the placement, you can kind of specify where you want the items to be on the toolbar itself. So if we have navigation bar leading, that'll be on the left side of the nav bar. Navigation bar trailing will be on the right side. Principal will be in the center, and then bottom bar will be on, we'll make it a bottom toolbar instead of a top toolbar, like what you see in the image here. So just to briefly go over the example code. So we have the sign out button, and since the placement is navigation bar leading, it's on the left over here. And then since we have this other button called add restaurant and the placement is navigation bar trailing, it'll be on the right side over here. And so kind of bringing us back to the screens I was talking about in the earlier of the navigation, we mentioned that there is like a top like kind of navigation bar and also a bottom one. And you can see with what we just talked about with the toolbar, you can basically recreate the top and bottom through just using a toolbar itself. So here's some example code with two toolbars. It might look like a lot, but I'll break stuff down step by step. So here's the top toolbar. This is the very first toolbar that we see. And then we have a left button here and a right button here in a toolbar item. And then so for the placement, we put it leading, and here we put it trailing. So that's why it's on the left and on the right. So that's the very first toolbar. And then here's the bottom toolbar, and you'll notice that it's a little bit different in how we create it, but it's like still pretty much the same. So we have one toolbar item here, and you can see for the placement, we put it as the bottom bar, and then that's why it's on the bottom here. And so to make sure we can still place stuff how we want to place it within the toolbar, we create an H stack, and we have 3 buttons here with spacers. So that's why they're like spaced out pretty nicely. And then we add some padding as well. So that's why they're on the bottom and like pretty evenly spaced as well. So with just 2 toolbars, we basically recreate the main navigation used within apps that we're pretty familiar with. Okay, next is navigation title. This is pretty straightforward. It just sets the title of the current view in the navigation bar, and you'll want to attach it to the primary view inside a navigation stack or navigation split view. And for navigation stack, you'll want to attach it to the first view inside the stack. So the example is just one line, navigation title home, and then we have the big home over here. And you've probably seen it in the other demo code that I already went over as well. Okay, next we have hiding elements, and there's like some stuff you can do with this. So the first one is navigation bar hidden true. This just hides the navigation bar for specific views. You can also toggle it dynamically by using it other variables like is user logging in. So for example, if we want the navigation bar hidden, if the user is logging in, so that'll be like on the authentication screens, like the login screen or the registration screen, like you don't want them to see the nav bar yet. So you can toggle it this way. And then we also have navigation bar back button hidden, which hides the back button in the navigation bar as well. And in case you're like a little bit confused about what the navigation bar refers to, it just refers to the bar at the top of the screen that appears when a view is inside a navigation stack. But yeah, those are some handy stuff you can use as well for your app. Okay, we're having a little quiz. And if you're paying attention, this will be really easy. So which of the following should you not use? And just a hint, it's the ones that are deprecated that I mentioned. Does anyone? Okay, navigation view. There's also another one. Do you know what that other one is? Okay, it is not the navigation stack, but it's another one. No, not the third item. Yeah, so it's the navigation view and the navigation bar items. So make sure you don't use those and you use their respective functions instead, which would be navigation stack, navigation split view, and the toolbar. Okay, kind of bringing everything together in a small example from SwiftUI. So I just took this example from SwiftUI's page, and they're teaching people how to use like navigation. So I'll kind of be walking through it. So they have this code over here. So what they basically have is a navigation split view, and then this is their preview for that. So within the split view, they have a list of landmarks, and then in the detail, the text is just select the landmark. So this is their placeholder text for when nothing is selected. So this is what their phone screen looks like. And then yeah, so here this just defines the default detail view. And then when a user selects an item, the detail view would update to show information about it. So here's some other screens on their iPad. So you can see select the landmark is visible on the iPad as the placeholder text. It's also over here. And then you have the list on the side as well. And then this is the detailed view that you see. And then here's they add a navigation title that says landmarks, and that just adds this. So you might ask, like, why is navigation title here specifically? Like, why can't you place it maybe on this text instead? And that's because you want the navigation title to be showing on this screen with the list of the landmarks. So yeah, navigation split view creates the sidebar and also the detail view. And since you want it to be on the sidebar, you should attach it to this primary view over here. Okay, the next thing they add is a navigation link. This is the different syntax I was talking about. Like they have this label with a colon here, but you'll see that it's also like pretty much the same thing, just written in a different way. So for the navigation link, they're adding it to the landmark row over here, which is each one of these rows. And then once you click on the link, they take you to the landmark details. So what you have over here. So yeah, it's just like a slightly different way of writing it, but it's still the same concept. And then the next thing I'll talk about is programmatic navigation. And this might sound a little bit complicated, but this is what we'll be using in our app. So it's just basically passing an array of hashable data directly to a navigation stack to control which data is currently on the stack. So that might sound like really, really complicated, but in very simple words, it's an array of your path. So you have an array, and then you're just adding routes to which you're navigating to. Like if you have login, you add login to your array. And then you go to the registration screen, you'll add registration to your array. And then when you go back, you'll take the top one off from the array. So when you press the back button, SwiftUI automatically manages the navigation path for you. So you just want to be concerned about adding stuff to your array. So here's an example that I have over here. We have a navigation stack here, and we're passing in this like state variable presented numbers to the path. So the presented numbers is the array that I'm talking about that you're using to keep track of your routes. So we have this list from 1 to less than 16, so it's just 15. And then we have a navigation link for each of those values, 1 through 15. And then we also add a navigation destination for this one. And then basically we have a button you can see here that's saying go to next for each detail. And then on presented numbers, which is the state variable, like the array of the routes we have, we're appending I+1, which is the number of the next page that we want to go to. So you say go to next, and then so detail 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 4, 4 goes to 5, etc., etc. And then you press back, and then you can notice that you're actually like going to the right page when you press back, but there's like no back logic inside the code at all. So that's what SwiftUI handles for you. And all you want to care about is what you're adding to the presented numbers array. Okay, and I think this is the last thing we're talking about, which is sheets. It's not really navigation per se, but I think it belongs here more than anywhere else in this presentation. So it's a sort of navigation, right? So Sheets is just a modal view that slides up from the bottom of the screen and is used to present content temporarily without disrupting the current view. And that sounds like a lot, but it's just like on an average phone, you'll see like something that pops up. And that's just what the sheet is. So this is the syntax for it. So the first thing we have is presented. And this is, you'll put a variable here. And this is just basically to say, when this variable turns true, I want the sheet to show. So it'll determine whether to present the sheet that you create or not. And then here's two like pretty optional things you can add on dismiss and content. And you don't have to include these as all, like I'm just adding this because this is what you can add if you want to. So on dismiss is the closure to execute when dismissing the sheet. So like if you, when the sheet leaves and you want to do something, like maybe print out, oh, sheet is closing, you'll do it on dismiss. And the content itself is a closure that returns the content of the sheet. So whatever you want on the sheet itself. Here's an example. Yeah, this is the sheet I'm talking about. It's pretty simple. So we just have the sheet over here in this section. And then for is presented, we put the variable is sheet presented. You can see we instantiate the variable up here. So we set it to false originally because we don't want the sheet to be showing at the very beginning. And then we have a button here that sets is sheet presented to true when we click on the button show sheet. So when we click on the button show sheet, is sheet presented will be true. And then when it's true, the sheet will pop up since it'll be true. And then the content itself is the sheet view. It just says this is a sheet and a button for dismiss. This is also something to note about sheets is that if you want to dismiss the sheet, there's this environment dismiss variable you can add and the function dismiss if you want to close it. But yeah, that's all that a sheet is. And I'll be demoing the rest of our app code. And for convenience's sake, I've copied code for everything already since it's a lot. But yeah, I'll just go through everything one by one. Oh, you closed Xcode, didn't you? Really? Okay, I can just go through, I'll just go through the slide. Doesn't it take a while though? All right, let's see. Let's see how long this takes. I know. It's at least it's faster than my laptop. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, I hope everything will load, but I'm gonna go through the back end related stuff first. Zoom in. Oh, is that good? Okay. I'll go through the back end related stuff first, and I'm only gonna briefly mention stuff about it since that's not the main focus of our workshop. I'll explain the navigation stuff more in detail, and I'm also gonna briefly gloss over any styling that might be here. So the bulk of what we're gonna be talking about is just navigation. So yeah. So this app state thing is the first thing that's added since our previous session. And we have an enum here. And basically an enum is just like if you want to have certain like variables or keywords defined and you don't want other people to put like a random word in there and you want to check that the words match what you're allowing. So in this case, we have login, register, and the restaurant list view. And this is what we want for our possible routes. And then here in the app state, we have the variable routes. So this is the programmatic navigation I was talking about, and it's a type route. So what we want to say is that basically we will only want to accept either login, register, or restaurant list view. And then we start off with an empty array at first. And then another variable we have here is authenticated, and we set that as false in the very beginning since we want to make sure users like register or log in before they're able to access our app. And we also have this function called sign out. And you can see in the routes, we reset to just the login page. So once you want to sign out, you'll be taken back to the login page and we'll set is authenticated to false as well. So that's our app state. And we're going to be importing this into other files like content view and Bruin Eats app. And I'll kind of mention it again when we see it there. But that's just app state for now. And then the next controller I'll be talking about is Bruin Eats model. So I believe previously we had like a bunch of APIs in here already. The main thing that we'll be adding for this demo will be the authentication methods. So stuff like register, login, sign out. We might add some other ones as well, but I don't really recall which ones those are. If you're confused about the logic in these, please refer to our previous workshops or ask other officers as well, since I'm not the best person to ask regarding this. But yeah, so that's just to mention that we're adding some APIs in here as well. And then the next thing for setup is the constants, and this is also just adding these two URLs for the register and login. Yeah. Okay, we're going to be talking about what we actually see next. So the first thing I'm going to be looking at is the content view. And the content view, I think originally was also pretty similar. We didn't really add that much, but you can see for the content view here, we import the app state. This is what I'm talking about. So we want to bring in the app state here. And then within the navigation stack, we're passing in the appstate.routes. So this is the routes variable within the appstate file, which is what we're using to keep track of the path of routes that we have. So it's very similar to the previous example code that I showed before. Actually, this is the exact same code. But yeah, anyways, here we have basically this group, and it's saying that if we don't have an auth token, we want to bring the users to the login screen. Otherwise, we'll be at the restaurant list view. So you can see if I don't have an auth token here, I'll be at the login. Otherwise, if I have an auth token, I'll be taken to the restaurant list view. And then the navigation destination here, we're just looking at each route, whatever we have there. So if it's register, we'll be taken to registration screen. Login will be taken to login screen. And restaurant list view will take us to the restaurant list view. So yeah, that's it for content view, basically. And then I'll be talking about the login screen and registration screen next. So here's the login screen. Here we also have the app state variable, since we're also going to be navigating back and forth with the register button and also the login button itself. So there's a lot of code here, but I'm just going to talk about the navigation within this. A lot of it is just styling as well. So the first button we have here is the register button. So it's this code over here. And then you can see we have the register. And then what we're doing is that we're appending .register, which is the path we want to go to our appstate.routes. So we're pending register here, which means that we'll be taken to the register screen. And then after that, we also have the login button, which is down here. And then we have login. And then instead of what we have on the registration, we have a task that's await login. So if you scroll up, you can see that we have this big login function over here. Basically, we're just checking with the backend to log in. And if there's an error, we say login failed. Otherwise, if it's a success, we're appending the restaurant list view to our routes variable over here. So we'll be taken to the restaurant list view. And then we have something really similar with the registration screen. So on the registration screen, we have basically the same buttons. So we have the login button here, and here we're appending .login to appstate.routes. And then for register, we have the task await register. And so basically the register function is over here. It's very similar. We're using the backend, and if there's a success, we'll append the login. So after we successfully register, we want to take the user to the login page since we want them to log in there. And if there's any errors, it'll catch the error over here. But yeah, that's it for the login registration. Let me see if I can demo the login screen. I hope the account I created still works, but if it doesn't, I'll just skip this. But yeah, okay. We have a username. So I'll put my username. Or I guess the registration. Maybe it doesn't work, but we'll see. Okay, oh wait, the backend isn't started, that's why. You know what? But then the homepage won't show us up. Okay, I think I have to start your backend as well. Is it this one? Mm. Mhm. Well, this actually might take a while. I don't know. Don't worry, I pulled. Yeah, it should be up to date. When I had your laptop. Okay, yeah. Okay, the server started. That's good. Let's see. Hmm. Can I restart this? Hmm. Maybe I should restart this one as well. Okay. All right, let's see if this works. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, yeah. Okay, this one works. So I'll be using this little iPhone here instead. But yeah, you can see on the login we have the register button, and then when we click that, we'll be taken to the registration screen. If you press login, you'll go back to the login screen. And yeah, okay, let's see if my account works here, which hopefully it does.
Yeah, it seems like it's one.
I think that's because I put in the password wrong, but I don't know. That's why I made my password easier. Okay, yay! So the login worked. And then you can see when the login works that we're taken to the main page, which is the restaurant list view here. So yeah, that's it for the authentication part. But then we can talk a little bit about the restaurant list view itself as well. So here's the restaurant list view. There's two main things that we need to do for the restaurant list view from our previous session. The first one is the navigation up on top over here. There's also very similar navigation here as well, which I mentioned earlier. And then there's also the navigation itself, like when you click on Brewing Cafe and it takes you to the detailed page. So actually, the first one what to be talking about is clicking on the list view and being taken to the detailed view. And that's actually very straightforward. So it's just this part over here. So we have this list of restaurants, and then for each list of restaurant, we have this navigation link. And so if you click on the restaurant row view, the destination will be the restaurant detail view. So that basically covers just the navigation for each thing since you're applying it to the list of each restaurant. As for the stuff on top, like the sign out and the add restaurant button, we have this toolbar over here. So if you remember the toolbar that I talked about earlier, we have the toolbar items. So here we have two. And for navigation bar leading, we have sign out. And then we have the functions to actually like sign out the user. And then for the other toolbar item, we have navigation bar trailings and we have add restaurant. And then we'll do showing add sheet true. And showing add sheet true here is this variable that we have. We set it as false originally. And this is controlling the sheet to add a restaurant. And the logic for this is actually up here. So we have a sheet and then is presented. We're tracking the variable showing add sheet. And then if this is true, then we'll show the add restaurant view. So yeah. And then over here, we have something else that I also mentioned earlier. It's just hiding the back button on the navigation bar here. So that basically takes care of the upper buttons here. So if you add restaurant, this sheet will pop up. And the code for this sheet is also in this file, but I'm not gonna talk about it since most of it is just like the styling and whatnot. But then next we'll talk about the detail view and also like the button up here, which is also just part of the toolbar. So the detail view, all the code is down here. So we have a similar state variable called showing review sheet. And then we also have what is it? We have the sheet itself over here, which is tracking showing review sheet. And then we have an add review view. And then that view is also within this file itself as well. And then again, similarly, we have a toolbar up here which just says add review. And then if we click on the button add review, it'll set this to true. So that's why we see the sheet over here for add review, and we have a rating and comment and other stuff. So yeah, that's it for the navigation and the toolbar items. And as for this demo as well. I know there's like a lot of other stuff that I just like briefly went over. If you're really confused about it, all of this code is already uploaded onto our GitHub of the running demo for session 5. So you can feel free to take a look at that as well and then ask our officers if you're confused about anything. But yeah, that's it for the demo that I have. And then let's talk about some more fun stuff, in my humble opinion, computer navigation. And what is that, you may ask? What could be more fun? And that's UI UX. I know the last half of our session was called styling, but I think it's more similar to UI UX than styling itself. So yeah, UI UX, so fun. So that basically covers the gestures and haptic feedback, animations and transitions, accessibility and performance optimizations. But I'll just be talking about gestures and haptic feedback for now. Most of it is gestures. There's like one slide for haptic feedback, but I thought I should still add it since it's pretty interesting and important. And you may ask, why are gestures and haptic feedback important? Yeah, so if you if you've ever played like Subway Surfers, like and you're controlling the person in the game, what you're using is gestures. So like if you want to jump, you will swipe up. If you want to move different tracks, you'll swipe left and right. So there's like a lot of gestures being used. And then like if you want to click a button, you'll just tap on the button. So this is just stuff that you might not like really think too much about when you're using an app, but it's something that you will have to consider more thoroughly when you're building an app for yourself. So this is what gestures are. It's just a physical motion that a person uses to directly affect an object in an app or game on their device. And Apple actually has like this article out about the best practices for gestures. If you're interested, you can take a deeper read. I've attached a screenshot of like a little summary. The link to their article is in the slides as well. And then they also have this table of like the common gestures that exist and also the common uses for the gestures. So for example, if you touch, usually that's what people will correlate with to directly select or activate an object. And you can notice that in general, you want to respond to gestures in ways that are consistent with people's expectations. Like if someone sees a button and they expect to tap on a button to be able to like get to whatever the button's telling them to do, right? So you don't want to make it the button like a swipeable button or something because they just won't expect that and that just won't be something that'll make your app nice to use. So yeah, be consistent with people's expectations. So I'll be talking about like 3 main gestures. There's like gonna be a lot more, but hopefully this will get like the basic ideas across. So the first one we have is a tap gesture, and this is just a simple gesture where the user taps on a view. And it's one of the most common gestures for triggering actions. And one thing about the tap gesture is that you can specify the count for how many times you tap. So I have some code up here, and you notice that we have an on, and this will go for basically all the gesture as well. So it's called a tap gesture, but the syntax you want to use is on tap gesture. So on tap gesture, you'll want to do whatever you want to do whenever the tap is detected. In this case, I'm just printing tap gesture detected. And you're attaching the tap gesture to this text or like whatever else you want to attach it to. And then down here, I have a triple tap. So that means I want the user to tap 3 times before like it registers correctly. In that case, I'll put the count as 3. And here I'll print triple tap detected. So the next gesture is the long press gesture. And this responds when the user presses and holds a view for a certain duration. And here you can specify minimum duration for how long the user must press before the gesture is detected. So it's very similar syntax. And here we have on long press gesture, and it's attached to the text long press. And then we'll print long press detected. And here it's basically the same thing, except for we have this minimum duration area, and it says 5. And so after 5 seconds, it'll print 5-second long press detected. And you can actually test this for yourself as this will work on the Xcode as well. And then next one I'll talk about is drag gesture. And this is used for detecting dragging movements across the screen. So AKA it can also be used to detect swiping. We have some other syntax stuff here, and you'll notice that this one's a bit different from the previous 2 that we talked about. So here, instead of like an on drag gesture, we just have a gesture and we're attaching that to the text. And then we're calling drag gesture here. And we have on change. So what on changed is that this is something that like SwiftUI will fire continuously while the user is dragging, giving you the updated position. So like imagine if you're like printing this dragging, well, like every time you like drag it, it'll kind of update with the translation, which I'll talk about more later. And then we have on ended, which is fire when the drag ends. So in essence, it's when the user lifts their finger. But yeah, here's the value that we have here. So you will notice on change, we have value in, on ended, we also have value in, and value is just the value that's passed to both on change and on ended and is of type drag gesture dot value. So there's like three main things about the value that you might be interested in. One is translation, which is the amount the gesture has moved from the starting point. The second is location, which is the current position of the drag on the screen. And the third is start location, which is the initial position of the drag when it started. So yeah, here we have value.translation and here we have value.location. So here's a little quiz. I'll be asking about like giving you a certain scenario and then asking which one you think is the most appropriate. I think these are pretty straightforward, so hopefully you'll do well. So in a file manager app, you want users to press and hold a file icon to bring up a menu with options like rename or delete. What gesture should you use for that? Any thoughts? V? Yeah, so it's the long press gesture. Next one is you're implementing a notification system where users can swipe a notification card to remove it from the screen. What gesture is most appropriate in this scenario?
C.
C, yeah, that's correct. So it's a drag gesture. And last but not least, you're creating a photo viewing app where a double tap should zoom into an image. Which gesture is the best choice? Yeah. Okay, so you got the gestures. Those three are the ones that I'll be covering. I'm gonna be talking about two other gestures, but these are like slightly different in that they're not really a kind of gesture, but ways for you to combine different gestures together. So the first one is simultaneous gesture, and this allows you to combine multiple gestures where both gestures are active at the same time. So they're simultaneously done. So for example, you can detect both a tap and a drag happening simultaneously. So here we have the drag gesture syntax again, and we're tracking something with onChanged, but we'll add dot simultaneously here, and then with the tap gesture on ended. So basically what this is saying is that we want to detect the drag and then the tap together. And then this will print tapped while dragging. And then the second gesture is sequence gesture. So this allows you to perform gestures in a sequence. So you can require a long press to happen before a drag gesture starts. So here's some code on this side and then the correlated GIF over here. So this syntax that this person is using is quite different, but I'll just walk through it. So they have this message that's a state variable. So this message will change based on the different things that are happening. So they first start off with long press, then drag. And then they have a long press as a long press gesture. And once it ends, it'll say, now drag me. And then they have a drag gesture here. And on ended, it'll say success. And they want to combine it over here with the long pressed. And then you'll notice they're using dot sequenced over here. So that's what they're allowing you to perform gestures in a sequence. And you want the drag to happen, you want this to happen before the drag. So you have before drag, and then the text message is here, and we'll do the gesture and combine. So over here, you can see that they start with long press and drag, they drag it, and it says success. Yeah, that's how you can do sequence gestures. And there's many more gestures. So there's stuff like magnify gesture, rotate gesture. They have custom gestures just for Apple Pencils. They have custom gestures as well. And I'm only listing these to tell you that these things exist. And if you're more curious about them and you want to use them in your app, you can read the documentation. So the documentation is in the slides as well for that specific page. So you can read more about it if you're interested, but yeah, I only covered the really basic ones. And then this is our singular haptic feedback slide. So Apple or SwiftUI calls it sensory feedback. This is the syntax for it. So they have the type of feedback you want, and also this trigger where you'll be entering this variable that you will want to serve as a trigger. So it will automatically play haptic feedback when the variable that you put in here changes to true. They have different types of haptic feedback like increase, success, error, warning, start, stop, etc. Unfortunately, I don't really have a demo or any examples of this, since I think this is something that you can only play around with on your phone and you won't be able to really test it on your laptop or whatever you're using. But yeah. Next, we're going to be talking about animations and transitions. So, why animations and transitions? So I know like it'll seem pretty extra, but I think if you like go on to any kind of like modern web dev websites or like anything kind of like somewhat modern, you'll notice, or maybe you won't notice, but there will be a lot of like animations or transitionings like going on within the websites itself. And that's just kind of to elevate your experience and kind of provide more styling. So it's just a way to make your app kind of pop out and like catch your users' eyes. So I'll be talking about two kinds of animations. I'm only mentioning this because I've seen other people mention it. To be honest, I'm not super sure about the difference myself or like also how important this is either, but I'm just going to mention it so you're aware of it. So the first type of animation is an implicit animation. So this is automatic animations triggered by state changes, and then SwiftUI applies default animations to properties that change, and usually the developer doesn't have full control. The syntax you'll use for this is dot animation. And then the second type of animations are explicit animations. So this gives you more control over the animation, allowing you to define custom durations, delay, or timing curves. And here the developer has full control. And for this, you'll use with animation. So the first one I'll be talking about is the dot animation. This is the implicit type of animation. So for here, you can see we have the syntax is dot animation. We have whatever type of animation we want, and then the duration, and you'll put a number in this area for how long you want the animation to last, and then a value with a state variable. So whenever this state variable changes, that's when this animation will apply. So if you add this value part, it will only apply the animation when the state variable changes. Otherwise, if you don't like add this part, and the only part you have is this front part over here, it will apply the animation to the view it's attached to. So here are the other different types that we have. So we have default, linear, ease in, ease out, spring, timing curve. There's like a bunch more, but I only listed these ones. Here's like a little graph of what the animation looks like. So this is just basically like a velocity graph. So this represents like the speed of the animation as like time passes. So yeah. Here's an example. We have like a button and also like the state variable is animation, which we're setting to false. And every time we click the button, we're toggling this state variable. And then we have a lot of styling stuff going on here, but basically we're checking, we have this dot animation over here with the default type, and the value is animation. So every time is animation changes, we're applying this default kind of animation. So here for background, we have is animation, and then we're switching from black to red, and also the text hello world to press me. And then you can see that in the GIF right here that it's like transitioning between two, and it's like pretty animated, so it isn't like really jumpy or anything. And then the second one that I mentioned was with animation. So this is the syntax for that. So we have with animation and then the type. The type here, I believe, will be like the same as the different types that you have available for animation syntax. And then here you want the state change that triggers animation. So the syntax is a little bit different, and this will animate any state change inside it and affects all views that depend on that state. And one notable advantage is the ability for different views to be animated with a single call to with animation. However, the two different views must use the same state variable to do so. So here's an example with is animation. We have the same state variable is animation here as well. And then so for the button, we put with animation in here, and the type we're using is spring. And then we're also toggling is animation over here. And then here we're also doing something very similar with the background. So based on is animation, we'll be changing it from blue to black, black to blue. And then we have this offset thing, which is just changing the position. You can see that it's like moving from left to kind of right whenever you press it. So yeah, sometimes it's a bit different, but they can accomplish pretty similar stuff. And then that's it for animations. So I'll be talking about transitions next. You can see the syntax for this is a lot simpler. So it's just dot transition and the type. And there's different types for the transition. So you have stuff like opacity, slide, move. With move, you can specify an edge, and then scale, offset, So for the edge, you have like, you can specify if you want it to be leading, trailing, top or bottom. And you can also use dot combined with to combine transitions. Here's like some examples of some of the transition types that I talked about. So we have move, slide, push, and scale over here. And then you can see that like there are slightly different transitions. Here's an example for the transitions that we have here. So we have this button, press to show details, and then we have with animation, and we're toggling this show details state variable over here, which we set as false in the beginning. So if show details, then we'll have 3 texts that says details go here. We have different transitions for each of the texts though. So for the first one, we're doing dot move with the edge bottom here. And then we have dot slide, and then we have scale. So you can see like the transitions for each of these are like just slightly different. Like this bottom one is growing bigger, so that's the scale. And then the second one is like kind of sliding in from the left. And then this other one is kind of like moving up from the bottom. So that's just kind of it for transitions as well. So here's another small question to ask. Does anyone know like what the difference is between animations and transitions? Like I know they might seem like pretty similar, but I think there's like some use cases where you'd prefer one over the other. But I know it might sound similar, and it's okay if you don't know. But does anyone have like any ideas?
Do like the thing that's split and transitions to like other things that are affected by it.
Yeah, kind of. I would say like pretty similar. So animations just like change the properties of like an existing view over time. So like as you mentioned, like if you're like kind of like clicking a button that kind of exists and it can be applied to any property changes. So I would say animations are a bit more broad, but for transitions, it only controls how a view enters or like leaves the screen. So as the name suggests, it's just a transition for when it's coming or like when it's leaving, but animation is just more broadly something that you can control. So yeah. Next, we'll be talking about accessibility. And this will be a pretty short section, but I think it's something that to mention in case you're curious about it. So accessibility, and this is the purpose of accessibility is to make your apps accessible to everyone and to improve the user experience. I put some memes on the bottom that I thought were pretty funny. I don't know if you guys will understand it though, but yeah. But basically it's just ways of making users be able to experience and interact with your app more in like a better way, kind of. So here's some common, or maybe not common, but here's some pretty basic accessibility functions you can use within your app. So you have accessibility label with this label you put in here, and that provides a custom description for VoiceOver. You have accessibility hint, you'll put your hint over here, and this just adds extra context to describe an action. So it'll basically just be like a hint, like what the name suggests. And then we have accessibility hidden true, which removes an item from VoiceOver navigation. And there's like so much more than this. This is just really 3 that I picked. But yeah, if you're curious about it, you can also go read whatever documentation they have there. Okay, next is performance optimizations, which Sebastian will talk about.
Performance optimizations. So why does performance matter in our app? It matters because we want the user experience to be as smooth as possible. The main way we're going to work on that today is through more efficient rendering, which in turn lowers the memory usage. And how can we achieve this? We have to be more lazy. That's why we have something called lazy containers in SwiftUI, which are basically just optimized versions of the standard stack containers. So the thing lazy containers do differently is that they don't render all the child views immediately. They only render what appear on the screen, hence the name lazy. So when should we use lazy containers? They should be used when we deal with large data sets, for example, a long list of items, and with complex views in general. So looking back at the VStack from the custom view section of this workshop, it's quite easy to make this to a lazy VStack instead. You literally just add 4 letters here. And now we have a lazy VStack instead. And for this example specifically, it wouldn't really matter because you can see all the greetings on the screen anyways. But if we have a longer list of greetings like this, the lazy VStack will be much more efficient. So instead of like rendering all the different greetings, as you see on the left part of the screen, it will only render what's actually appearing on the screen. This is especially, it makes it much better, especially for like more memory demanding items like photos, for example. It works very similarly with HStack. Here we also have a scroll view. So similarly, you just add the word lazy in front of the HStack to make it more efficient. So here, instead of then rendering all 5 fruit, it will only render the apple, the banana, and the pear, since that's what's appearing on the screen. We also have lazy grids, both V grids and H grids. So as you can see here, I'm defining an array of grid items, which is what we use in SwiftUI to like decide how a grid should look. Here I'm using the lazy vgrid function, and here I have basically a for loop to generate 100 items of the hack logo image. So this would look like this. But as you can see, there's much less than 100 ACM hack logos on screen. So if we were using like a normal grid, it would actually render all of them, which would be like very inefficient and have high memory usage. But since we're using the lazy grid instead, it will only render what's actually appearing on screen. And finally, publishing your app to the App Store. You'll need a couple things to do this. First of all, you need to have thoroughly tested your app, not just for the user experience, but also because it has to like pass Apple's test and be validated by Apple. And if you have a bunch of bugs, it won't you won't be able to publish it. And also you'll need an Apple developer account, which is $100 per year. And the reason you need this is that you need the developer account to use App Store Connect, which is the main platform you use to be able to publish apps on the App Store. So to do this, you log in to the App Store Connect page and go into My Apps. You then press on New App right there. From there on, you can add all your names, descriptions, screenshots, category, pricing, and all the other information about your app. You can then go back to Xcode and go to the product tab at the top. Go to the archive button. And from there on, you'll be able to distribute your app to the App Store Connect platform. And from there on in, you basically just submit it for review. And if it gets approved, you're able to release it immediately, or you can schedule a release later. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming to Stackschool. That was all 5 sessions. I hope you all learned something. And we would appreciate if you would scan the QR code and fill out the feedback form. And yeah, thanks to Jen as well. Great.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'm doubtful. I don't think so.
Recording it.
Yeah, recording. Okay.
Really? Wait, I'm too good.
What do you think?
Stop